It's my pleasure to be joined by Kyle Harris, who is running for State House of Representatives in District 7, Seat A. So, without any further ado, Kyle, thanks for joining me. How did you end up here? What brought you to the ballot?
Well, first off, thanks for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. Um, Basically, the reason I'm here today is because of what I've been seeing happening in this state and the way things have been moving. I started getting heavily involved into politics about 2 years ago. Before that, it was mostly just local stuff, city council meetings, county commissioner meetings, local issues that we were dealing with here in Nez Perce County. And a friend of mine got me into the PC race back in 2022, where I became a PC. I won that race from the guy who'd had it for decades before me. And from there, I just kind of started getting active. I was down in Twin Falls when we passed the current platform that we're running on now, helped get Dorothy Moon elected into office. And from there, I just kept plugging away, staying as involved as I could. Um, my kids are a big part of it. I brought my kids here to this state in 2010. I'm originally from Washington. I hate to admit it, but we're not all perfect. So I've been here for 14 years. I'm married. I've got two great kids. When we got married, we knew we weren't going to raise our kids there in the city. We wanted to get away. My wife is originally from the valley here. And so we brought him here thinking we were going to be safe. We're going to get away from all the craziness and the insanity. And then my son, who's 11 years old in fifth grade, came home with a gender identity packet from school. And that was right as this whole thing started to take off. So Mike Kingsley, the word was that he was not going to run because of personal reasons. And I've known Mike for years. And so I was approached by some people and asked if I would run. And I said, if Mike Kingsley will give me his endorsement, I will run. And so Mike gave me his endorsement. Cindy Carlson jumped on board, and I just kind of hit the ground running with no notice, just winging it until we're here today.
Well, yeah, as we record this, it's only a couple days left until the election. What have you been hearing so far as you talk to people? Obviously, with your accident, you're not necessarily getting out as much, but I presume you've been communicating with folks in your district.
Sure.
I guess just your bad luck that you have one of the largest districts in the state, but
It is very time consuming. So fortunately, right at the beginning, when the filing deadline hit, I was able to take a couple weeks off of work since I run my own business, and I was able to get out to Idaho County and Adams County and really kind of hit as many of the meetings as I could get to, the Central Committee meetings, the Republican Women's Club meetings. I went to a Central Committee meeting in Adams County. I went to their Lincoln Day event. Unfortunately, the accident happened right before the Riggins Day rodeo, so I haven't really had much of a face in Riggins, but there's been some great people in the Idaho County Central Committee that have been willing to put up signs for me. People in Adams County have been willing to put up signs and spread the word. I've been getting a lot of support up there. Everybody's kind of got the same concerns. I've been getting a lot of calls these last couple of days, and most of it's attached to the school levy there in Idaho County. School choice seems to be a big thing. I've learned a lot about school choice and the different options that are on the table just with research and talking to different people. I never knew that Idaho was the least regulated state in the nation when it comes to homeschooling. They have zero involvement. The state has no involvement whatsoever in homeschooling. And so I was speaking with a lady who's part of Homeschool Idaho, and she was telling me her views on why she's against the voucher system. And it was a great point because I never thought of it this way. And her thought was, right now the state has no way to get access to homeschooling. But the second we give a homeowner that's homeschooling their kids a voucher, we as taxpayers expect accountability. We want to know where that money's going. And so now that gives the state a foothold into anybody that's taking money in the form of a voucher because we want to know where that money's being spent because it's all tax money. And so for me, I'm all for school choice. My daughter's going to a charter school next year here in Lewiston that opened last year. And I love the charter school idea because it truly does breed competition with standard public education. And then my only caveat is I would want an opt out portion for homeschool parents that don't want to take that check. They just let their taxes go, spent however it's spent, but that way the state can't gain access to what they're doing with their homeschool situation.
Well, there was an education savings account bill that came out last year. It died in the Senate. It got opposition from both sides, the public school system and the people who support that and don't want to see anything done to that. They were very much against it. But then Homeschool Idaho and a lot of the homeschool folks were against it too. Not necessarily because of anything that was specifically in the bill, but just because they're worried that any bill,
Sure.
starting down that road is a bad idea. This year in the House, there was a tax credit bill. So
Mm-hmm.
if it had passed, which it didn't, didn't even get out of committee, you just mark on your taxes that you were, had private
Homeschooling.
school tuition or homeschool
Sure.
expenses or whatever, and you'd get something back. Is that something you'd support, or do you think that's still, a little
You know,
iffy?
it's hard for me to give a solid answer, but just hearing the gist of what you just said, I kind of like the idea of a tax credit. If you can, at least that way, directly you're being affected. And so you can say it's like a grocery tax credit or any other, what's that, child daycare credit you get for childcare.
Hmm.
You can check it off. This comes right off your taxes, and you can take that credit and use it towards private education or homeschool curriculum or whatever you want to use for. That's fine. I like the idea, but I would really need to sit down and see what the verbiage is and how it's written.
Obviously, the devil's always in the details. I've sometimes read bills that I think, oh, that's a reasonable idea, and then somebody else points something out, or I read it closer, and oh, wait, that does the opposite of what I thought it was doing.
Yeah, always a little fat tied in there somewhere.
Yeah. Well, that's actually something I've had conversations with candidates and incumbents about. This is a part-time job. You're paid less than $20,000 for 3 months of work, but really, I mean, it is full-time because those 3 months you're working long days,
Oh yeah.
weekends too, and then when you're not in session, you're preparing legislation, coordinating with
Yep.
other legislators, talking to stakeholders, talking to your constituents. Uh, but you go there, and it's just you. Whereas the executive branch, the governor, attorney general, treasurer, they've got staffs, full-time
Mhm.
experts. And then you've got the lobbyists. They come in and they're experts in whatever fields they're representing. And so you walk in there as a new legislator and you're going to be bombarded by opinions and ideas,
Yep.
and you must do this. Uh, how are you going to stay grounded, connected to your constituents and grounded to your principles?
So that's one of my big talking points when I go out and meet constituents is I want to be a true representative of the people of the district. I will ask for input. I will take all the input. I will be easily accessible. And I'm a principled conservative. I stand on my moral principles and I never waver. That's who I am as a person. Nobody's going to tell me what to do. That's just who I am. And then I've got great people to lean on locally, like Mike Kingsley, Cindy Carlson. These are all people I respect that have been down there doing this, fighting this fight. And I know that they're a phone call away. If I'm getting questioned about something and I don't know the answer, I can make the phone call and I can get that information. I can talk to other legislators down there and get input. I like to be logical about my thought process. So I don't take anything at face value. I want to hear your opinion. If it's a lobbyist, if it's some other representative, I'll hear what you guys say, but then I'm still going to go reach out to somebody else and hear what they got to say and then form an opinion based off of all the information, not just something one person's telling me.
So, you're running to fill the seat of Representative Mike Kingsley, who's been there for, a couple of years. He's been there for a while. Uh, he's obviously a public member of the Idaho Freedom Caucus, uh,
Correct.
which is formed of, it's the most conservative of the conservatives. And, they don't always vote together on everything, but they generally,
Sure.
work together as a group. And then on the other side, you have the Main Street Caucus, who are
Yep.
I see them as the left wing of the Idaho Republican Party. But then you have people in the middle. I was at a candidate forum a few weeks ago, and a senior legislator got up and said that he doesn't like the idea of these caucuses because there should only be one thing, the Republican caucus. So, what are your thoughts on that? Would you want to take Representative Kingsley's place in the Freedom Caucus, or would you want to, go your own way?
Actually, I gave Mike my word that I would do everything I can to become a part of the Freedom Caucus. I'm a strong, stout conservative. There's no gray area for me. And when you get these people that say they're not Main Street, they're not Freedom Caucus, there's something in the middle. And to me, that's just gray area. I don't like gray area. I like to know who people are. You're either one way or you're the other. And you get this Main Street caucus. I would dabble in saying that they're not even Republican. I mean, you have people like Lori McCann who votes Democrat 56% of the time. That's not a Republican to me. So when you have other legislators who, I'm not going to name names, but there's plenty of other legislators you can go ahead and research, and most of them vote Democrat most of the time, and they have an R by their name. And to me, if you can't vote with the Republican platform, you're not a Republican. And if voting with a platform makes me a right wing conservative, then I guess I'm a right wing conservative.
Eh, Nothing wrong with that,
Yeah.
at least in my opinion. Um, you're running to, as I said, to fill the seat of Representative Kingsley. And looking back, I was looking at his electoral history, and he hasn't been seriously challenged in a while.
No.
So he was lucky enough to be in a position where he's able to, end his legislative career on his own terms. Um, what is your sense as you're talking with voters? Are they looking for somebody just as conservative, or do you think people are looking for something different? What's the niche that you're seeing there?
It's kind of almost 50-50, maybe 60-40. Most people that I meet, like, unfortunately with the redistricting, a lot of people in Idaho County didn't know who Mike Kingsley was.
Hmm.
He was only there for 2 years as their representative. But the people that do know him really liked what he did. There's always going to be people that have an issue with the Freedom Caucus or the IFF. And I agree, there's some things with the IFF that I'm not going to vote in line with. I don't think they're right 100% of the time. And I don't think the Freedom Caucus is necessarily right 100% of the time. But at least 90% of the time, they're probably going to be getting the same vote I'm going to get. And so you see the difference between the moderates and the conservatives as you're campaigning. And I've actually won quite a few of the people that were saying they were on the moderate side over just by being willing to listen or engage. People will call and leave a voicemail. I'll call them back, and they're blown away. They're like, "Wow, this guy actually returned my phone call." But that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to represent these people, and I want their opinions, and I want their input, and I want to do the best job I can do.
So looking at the map of District 7 over here, it's obviously very large. I don't know, 80%, 90% is federal lands of some sort or
Yeah,
another. Uh, what's your take on that? A few years ago, there was a debate in Idaho over somehow taking over federal lands,
sure.
and that seems to have died down in the last few years. What are your thoughts on what should be the relationship between the state, the feds, the people, and all this land in places like your district?
I honestly believe the federal government should not have a foothold anywhere in the state in any position whatsoever, whether it's education, forests, you name it. With federal dollars comes strings and control, and you see it like locally here in Lewiston. They're doing all these new expansions, and they're taking all these federal dollars, and with these federal dollars, they have to do 3 times the amount of work to put in ADA accessibility and all this other stuff that normally wouldn't be required because we're already there. It's just not good enough. And also with the federal lands, I'm learning a lot about the federal land issues recently because it's such a big deal in Idaho County. And the best thing I've heard yet is that getting the federal government out of our forests and allowing us to properly manage and log that will give money for education. That's where our money for education mainly came from back when we were logging. And so I'm all for it. I don't like the federal government. I don't think they should be here. I believe in state sovereignty, and we need to get it back.
Another thing that you have in your district is part of the Nez Perce Reservation. Have you had any conversations with tribal leaders or representatives? And is that what unique challenges does that pose?
Honestly, I've never been approached and I've never reached out. I don't know how to answer that question.
Uh,
I mean, they're basically a sovereign nation, but not a sovereign nation. And I know they have their own unique situations they're dealing with. And I think the best thing we can do as legislators working with people within our communities and district is just listen, have conversations. I'm not afraid of tough conversations. I'm not afraid of being approached or approaching them. Honestly, I'd never even thought about it until now.
One of the things you do mention on your website is defending the dams, and that's obviously a big issue, and it ties back into what we're talking about of
Sure.
federal control of Idaho lands. Um, you have one of our congressmen has advocated removing them, the other wants to keep them. What are your general thoughts on that whole issue?
My thoughts are that it's insanity. It's pure insanity. We're getting preached about green energy, this green energy that, got to have battery powered cars mandated by 2030, all this stuff that's not actually green. And yet we're sitting on these dams that are the greenest form of energy we can have, and they want to remove them. 10% of all the wheat in the United States goes down the Snake River. 54% goes from the Snake River to the Columbia. That's facts. So you remove that, and you've just decimated the economies, not just in Nez Perce, but in Idaho and Adams County and every other county, Latah County. They're gone. As an electrician, I used to be a grain mill electrician. I see all the product that moves down to these barges and gets barged down. Then you got the environmental impact on top of that people aren't talking about. Oregon just removed the dams on drawing a blank. They just removed 3 dams down there in
Hmm.
Oregon. And if you go on there and look at what's been left over from the removal, the environmental impact is the government came in, blew the dams out, all the silt, everything there, killed all the fish life. It's gone. And they just left a mess and said, here you go, deal with it, community, have fun.
Hmm.
And so nobody's looking at the big picture. Plus, eventually they're going to say, we need to rebuild those dams because we need the energy. And you know how much that's going to cost in today's dollars?
Too
So
much.
it's just insanity. It is. I don't know how we're having this debate, or it's even a debate or a topic, because one, I don't think it's ever going to happen. I will do everything I can to make sure it doesn't happen, but it just kind of turned into this weird talking point that the left is trying to use because of fish. And if you want to solve the fish issue, go take care of the sea lions at the mouth of the river. It's a great start.
Well, that's probably a little bit outside of our purview,
Sure.
but and that really illustrates one of the complicated things about government and
Yeah.
different layers of government. You have, our relationship with Washington and Oregon. We have to share the river. If
Yep.
if if we set up a dam on the Idaho side, they probably wouldn't be very happy. Just blocked off all the river, all the water.
Sure.
So you have to have the federal government somehow adjudicate that, and then at the local level, you have, once again looking at water. I've been hearing from a lot of people throughout the state that water issues, water supply is a big issue. Um, the more people who move in, the more water they use. The drains the aquifer. The big farms, big other buildings that down here south of me in Cuna, there was going to be a Facebook data center, and that
Oh,
was going
yeah.
to end up using a ton of water.
Yeah.
Right now, I think it's on hold. But anyway, so where I'm getting with that is that you have these issues where the government has perhaps a role.
Sure.
We debate what the role of government is. So I guess, what's your philosophy on that? How far should government go? How much should it be involved in things like water or emergency services or,
Sure.
first responders or anything like that? And where do we draw the line?
So for me, you'll never get rid of the federal government. As much as I'd like to see them back to what their constitutional duties are, it's never going to happen. They've got too much power, and they're never going to let it go. So all we can do, I'm a big accountability guy. We have representatives in DC right now. We have a governor that can represent us pretty powerfully in DC, even though he's not there. But we're not holding our representatives accountable. We're not holding their feet to the fire. We're not making them truly get in there and fight. But the federal government, I don't mind them being an umpire between the states on something big like energy, because it's a multi-state issue. It's, most of our energy, I believe, is going to California, and so whatever we do up here is going to affect them down there, which I don't really care about them, but they are people too. Uh, but accountability has to be everything, and oversight. If the federal government is involved, we have to have airtight oversight over what's happening, and people actually reading bills or reading what's coming in these 300-page bills, which should be outlawed to begin with. We just need to get back to the basics, dumb things down, common sense goes a long ways, and just be rational and logic about things. And I think a lot of people, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, left, right, center, if you just use rationale and logic, you'll find that most of the time we agree on most of the stuff, but emotions get in the way and things go crazy.
Something you said in there about states, it's something that doesn't necessarily have to be a federal government issue. It reminded me this year, Representative Wisniewski had a bill to create an interstate compact, or allow the governor to enter into an interstate compact to support Texas's efforts to
Sure.
secure the border. And that's an interesting idea to me because you know the federal government's a problem, like you said. You're not a fan. Uh, so if there's a way for Republican states to maybe work together, bypassing the federal government, that
Sure.
might be an interesting idea. The bill itself ended up just going in the drawer in Senate State Affairs and was never heard from again.
Not
But
surprised.
that that one specifically is about immigration, and that's another huge issue that we have. There were two memorials this year. One of them called on the Congress to impeach the president for not enforcing the border. The other wanted immigration reform so we can have more legal guest workers. And that's the one that passed. There's a lot of voices in the legislature, especially from Eastern Idaho, who they debated on the floor saying that illegal aliens are just part of the economy and we can't just get rid of them. We can't just kick them out. We can't, enforce the law on them. So we need to allow them to stay or find a way for them to become legal. What are your thoughts on just that whole issue?
No, that's a non-issue for me. If you break into this country, you should be deported out of this country, period. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you're doing. I've worked with a lot of immigrants. I used to paint houses when I was in high school. They're great people, but there's lots of them that came here the right way and they do the same jobs and they do great work. I've never found one that didn't do good work. They contribute to society, they pay their taxes. But when you already break the law to be into a country and then you're giving benefits for breaking the law to stay in this country, and then they're going to give you a driver's license or a driving ID so you can drive farm trucks. Well, what's that going to lead to? It's going to lead to voting rights. And that's, you're already seeing it. There was 128 Democrats in the House in DC voted to, oh, it's a new bill just went by. I've drawn a blank. Something about
There's,
it just happened.
yeah, I know what you're talking about. There's a lot of nonsense coming out of DC.
Yeah. So, and then you have the other side of the border situation. Nobody's talking about our northern border in the state. They're catching terrorists coming out of Canada all day. The feds have given plenty of reports on it. You're still having fentanyl crossing the northern border. You're still having human smuggling coming across the northern border, and we're not even talking about it in this state. And that's something that directly affects us.
Now, during the debate, people said that if you deported, they came up with the number of 35,000 illegal immigrants are working in Idaho. If you deport all those people, it could just crash the economy. We'd have to pay 5 times as much for food, which we're already paying a ton for because of inflation. Um, is there a way to enforce the law without causing that, or is that something we just have to bite the bullet until we, you know, replace people in those jobs?
Again, that's another one of those tough questions where I don't have enough knowledge from their side of the argument to really form a true rebuttal. In my personal opinion, I think they should just be deported. They're here illegally. They broke the law. If I went into their country and broke the law, I'd be sitting in prison right now. It's if I illegally crossed to Canada, they're going to throw me in prison. So we can't have double standards. Like I said, I'm a black and white guy. Right is right, wrong is wrong. I don't like gray area. If there was a way to allow them to earn citizenship, I don't know. Again, I'd have to sit down and dive really deep into this argument to see what the true positives and negatives are and then truly weigh them out. In my mind, I want to say no, just get rid of them.
Hmm. You say you're, black and white, no gray areas. So I assume you'll have fairly straightforward answers on things like abortion, Second Amendment, things
Yeah.
like that.
Yep. Yeah. Pro 2A, 100%. I think we can do better. Red flag laws are terrible. Uh, Abortion, I'm 100% pro life. I will say life of the mother is one that kind of rings for me because if a mother already has a child, that child should not have to grow up without a mother. And if it's a true medical reason that she may die from that early pregnancy, sure. But that's kind of my only caveat. And again, it would have to be, I mean, it's less than 1% of abortions are truly because of medical reasons. And so when people throw out life of the mother, they're thinking that it happens all the time, and it truly doesn't. You're talking about almost not even a statistic. And so in those situations where it truly is that way, honestly, I'd let the parents make the choice. It's a medical decision at that point, and I think the government shouldn't have any roles in medical decisions. Right now, we're using abortion as a way to not be accountable for your actions. And if you look at it, I think it's 96% of all abortions are for lifestyle or economical reasons. That's wrong. We're
Mhm.
killing babies because you made a choice and you don't want to live with it. And I'm an accountability guy. There's an action for every a reaction to every action. And if you're gonna go out and play the game, you got to pay the price.
I think it was, I heard someone explain it. I want to say it was Senator Herndon, but I'm not sure that when you're talking about the life of the mother, when it's actually a life and death situation, then it's not even a question of abortion at that point. You're just, the doctor's
Just
performing
life saving.
triage,
Mhm.
trying to save as many lives as possible.
Sure.
And that is a completely different category. And
Sure.
I
I
think
agree.
that's a reasonable way to see it.
I do too. I agree 100%.
And yeah, you mentioned Second Amendment, no red flag laws. Speaking of Senator Herndon, he started this whole ball rolling with the private organizations that would lease out public lands and then impose restrictions on carrying guns in them. He sued Sandpoint over it, and they actually lost in the Supreme Court 5-0 because apparently the law didn't say you can't do that. So they crafted a new law this year that says if you're a private organization and you're on public property, and you don't have restricted access, like if you're doing a concert with tickets or something, you can
Sure.
still prohibit carrying. But if it's just like a farmer's market or a street fair, then you can't. Do you think that goes far enough, or do we need to go further?
I think we should go further. I
Yeah.
don't think they should be able to restrict your gun right anywhere unless it's somebody's private property.
Mhm.
If a business wants to say you can't carry a gun in my store, they have a right as a business owner to have that choice. But I should be able to carry my gun anywhere on public lands in public, and there should be no question about it. We have some of the best gun laws in the state, but there's still some, and there shouldn't be really any. I mean, you can't say an absolute zero. There, common sense again kicks in, and so I love our castle law, but I think it could be better. Um, I love constitutional carry. I think it's great. Uh, but anytime they want, if domestic violence, that's a big one that everybody likes to touch on. If you've committed domestic violence, you should lose your gun rights. I don't think that should be the case. Maybe if you used a firearm in the act, sure. But if you just got in an argument with your old lady and you might have smacked her or something, you shouldn't lose your gun rights for that. That's insanity. They have no founding to say that you're going to go kill somebody now. It just doesn't make sense. And so I'm 2A all the way. I carry a gun everywhere I go, unless somebody says I can't. But
Well, there was
I don't
this year there was a bill that would have allowed teachers and school staff to carry,
know.
and would have prohibited school boards and school administrators from making public schools into gun-free zones, which a lot of them
Sure.
do. It passed the House and once again got stuck in the drawer in Senate State Affairs. I assume you would have supported that one. One of the things that people came up with against it was that, well, this isn't, what if school boards want to force people who carry on their property to have more training? And it was already only people who had enhanced carry permits. It wasn't just
Sure.
everybody. So,
Yep. I think it's a great idea. I think we should have uh, the campus no guns on college campuses removed. Is our we have young women that are getting assaulted all the time on college campuses, and they have what do they have, mace or a whistle? Like it's insanity. Uh, I don't think we should force teachers to carry guns. I think if there's a teacher that is comfortable and has done their enhanced training and wants to take on that burden, because that is a burden. That's a lot of stress carrying a gun around a lot of people and not knowing what's going to happen. And so if they feel comfortable with that and they have taken their enhanced class and done some training, sure, sign me up.
I remember at the convention at Twin Falls 2 years ago, it was on a college that didn't allow carrying, and that
Yeah,
created a bit of a
I was a little upset
controversy.
about that. I was there. There's all kinds of controversies around that convention.
Well, speaking of convention and Republicans, one of the things that's been going on the last 2 years, ever since then, is, very much a factional divide within the Republican Party.
Sure.
You have a lot of really conservative legislative district and county committees that are holding their legislators accountable according to the new rules that say they can censure them. And then others are endorsing candidates, because again, new rules. Whereas others continue to say that it's ultimately up to the voters. The PCs shouldn't have a voice there. Where do you see what should be the relationship between the party, the legislators, and the people, and how do we get back to a place of real unity?
So ultimately, a PC is no different than a legislator, in my opinion. We're voted on by our own little precinct, which is no different than a district, right? So I am a PC. I'm actually running for re-election unopposed right now. If somebody can get the best piece of information they can get, it's going to come from the party that the people are running from. So, if you say you're a Republican and I'm a PC in the Republican Party locally, I'm going to have a lot of information about these people that are saying they're Republicans. We have a vetting process that we go through where we give them questions, they give us answers, and then we actually interview them and then we rate them based on their answers. To me, that's useful. As a voter, I would like to have that knowledge if I'm in a Republican primary and I need to make a choice. I want to know what their answers were. I want to know how they rated with the people that I've already elected to do these things. Uh, the state party, in my opinion, has been doing a great job these last 2 years. They've really kind of got hands on things. Without them, we wouldn't have had a primary, even though it was a caucus and it wasn't perfect. We made it work. I was a caucus captain. I did the best I could do and got as many votes as I could in that situation. And so, honestly, I have no desire to work with a lot of the moderates. I think some of them aren't as bad as others, but there's some far left Republicans that I think are beyond saving, and they should just change their affiliation.
Well, we'll see what happens Tuesday, and then again next month in Coeur d'Alene at the next convention. It's
Mm-hmm.
we're going to find out where people stand.
Coeur d'Alene will be a fun one.
Well, I hope to see you there.
I
So,
plan on it.
um, as we near a close here, are there any other issues we haven't covered that that are important to you that you want to communicate?
You know, I think a lot of people have lost some of their fight with the school issues we're having because the library bill passed. So I think a lot of people kind of took a deep breath and they're just kind of relaxing on it. And I'd like them to know that that's just the tip of the iceberg. Like I said, my kid came home from fifth grade at 11 years old with a gender identity packet. And then the school denied it and said it never happened. And then I proved that it did because I still have it. And then they had to retract. Oh, well, it was only this. And at the end of the day, we have administrators and we have school officials that aren't doing their job. We're paying them a lot of money. They're supposed to be reviewing these materials before it comes to our kids, and they're not doing it. And so we need to keep holding these people accountable. One of the first laws I would like to actually write is a transparency and curriculum bill, because right now you basically need a FOIA request to figure out what your kids are learning. As a parent, you should be able to just go into the school and say, hey, what are you teaching my kids? It's not a big ask. It's not like it's hard. They have it all printed out and planned anyways. So I think we need to make it easier for parents to have a true role in the education of their children. And right now we don't. There's some schools are better than others, some principals are better than others, and we need to have that consistency throughout the state that makes it easy, because with the COVID thing, we saw a lot that they didn't think we were going to see. And most of it was because of Zoom and all these things where parents were actually watching what was happening in the classrooms. And that's when this whole thing started, because we actually were able to get eyes and ears on things. It's no different than the books that they have in these school libraries. I've seen them there. I've seen friends of mine's daughters in the high school check out books that are not age appropriate and bring them home. And so these are things that we need to continue to fight. And I just want to make sure people remember that the library bill is a great win, but that's just the tip. There's a whole lot more with the whole alphabet thing that they're trying to do. And it's, again, it's insanity. I don't know why we have to have these discussions. These are children. It was no different than when you were a kid or when I was a kid. We didn't have these issues. It wasn't a thing. And now all of a sudden it's this big societal issue. And really, it's just people have lost their mind and we're living in delusions and we're supporting it.
I think one of the weaknesses of just people in general is that we tend to get stuck in a certain time period. And so when you think of what the library is like or what school's like, you think back to your own time and think, oh,
Mhm.
well, everybody was freaking out about stuff, but it really wasn't so bad. So it's probably not so bad this time.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people
Yeah.
I run into say it's not happening here, but it
Yeah.
is. I have it in my hand. So it's, I hope people, really do their research. Jim's a good guy. I got nothing bad to say about him. We're both pretty conservative people. I don't think he's going to do a terrible job. I don't think I'm going to do a terrible job. And so, it basically comes down to where we stand on certain things. And for me, it's more of a bringing fresh ideas and a new face and no ties to anybody. I don't owe anybody favors. I don't have relationships that may cost me a favor or a vote here or there. It's just going to be straight, shoot from the hip, conservative, and what the constituents want from this district.
Kyle Harris, candidate for House of Representatives, District 7, Seat A. Thank you.
Thank you.